Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
Creepshow is truly amazing. The special effects were created by horror legend Tom Savini, famous for his work on Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Friday the 13th 1 through 4. His talents are fully on display here, with some great makeup and truly gruesome deaths. Directed by George.A.Romero, famous of course for the Night of the Living Dead series, and written by the king of horror himself, Stephen.King. The movie is broken up into 5 separate stories, entitled Father's Day, The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, Something to Tide You Over, which is my personal favorite, The Crate, and They're Creeping Up on You, which is just straight up fucking disgusting. So I'm warning you now, if you have a weak stomach or you're scared of bugs, turn off the video at story 5. The casting is also a huge factor in why Creepshow works so well for me. Leslie Nielsen giving an absolutely chilling performance, really showing off his range as an actor.
Ow! Help! Nobody's gonna hear you, Harry. Nobody's gonna hear anything.
On the other hand, we have another highlight being Stephen King, who is just absolutely hilarious, really getting to show off his comedic timing. Creepshow was successful enough to warrant a sequel, but a whole 5 years later. The original publisher of the film, Warner Brothers, wanted nothing to do with it, thinking it wouldn't make any money, causing production to go to a smaller studio, New World Cinema, cutting the budget in half in the process. But how did the sequel turn out? While not nearly as good as the original, it still has some good mixed in there and is worth watching. However, it does feature some pretty horrendous acting.
Move, lady, or I'm gonna blow off your old man's Agobishis!
Special effects aren't quite up to snuff as the original, even with Tom Savini returning. This, however, can be forgiven, seeing as how his budget wasn't nearly as big. Another disappointing aspect is the amount of stories this time around, going from 5 in the original to a measly 3 in the sequel, which are entitled Old Chief Woodenhead, The Raft, which is my personal favorite story, and The Hitchhiker. The film was originally supposed to include 5 stories, the ones being excluded entitled The Pinfall and The Cat from Hell, but obviously these were excluded due to budget constraints. Thankfully so, seeing the quality of the 3 stories we did end up seeing.
The bird Rachel swim! Come on!
Creepshow 2 performed decently at the box office, pulling in $14 million on a $4 million budget, but unfortunately, we never did get a Creepshow 3. Well, we kind of did, but I don't really count it. Released in 2006 by Taurus Entertainment Company, it didn't feature any involvement from the original creators or crew. It was a straight to DVD release, and honestly, I haven't seen this one outside of the first 5 minutes. It does go back to a 5-story format, but on a budget of $3.5 million in 2006, you could just imagine the quality of each. Production started on Creepshow 3 as far back as 1992, originally being developed as an animated film. This, however, was scrapped, and in 1994, it was reported that development started on a Creepshow 3 TV movie, which was essentially going to be a backdoor pilot for an eventual Creepshow TV series, neither of which coming to fruition. I can't really find much information on why this was in production for so long, and that brings us to the modern Creepshow, which is an anthology TV series premiering in 2019. We currently have 4 seasons. I could say I really like it. It definitely captures the essence of the original movie far better than either of the sequels. Even without much involvement from Stephen King, you can really feel the passion that everyone working on it has for the original. Now, that's a lot of Creepshow to get through, and I do plan on getting through all of them. Not a better place to start than the original, so let's get into it. For the opening of our film, we get a scene of a father and son arguing over his son reading Creepshow comics, until that comes to an end with a swift smack to the face. He then goes and throws that comic straight into the trash. Fun fact for you, the kid in this scene is actually Stephen King's son, Joe King, who's also an author and goes by the name Joe Hill. We then see this awesome animatronic appear at young King's window, and we know we're in for something incredible. And that leads us into our first story, and it's titled Father's Day. Hank, played by Ed Harris, is visiting his girlfriend's family on Father's Day. They have a lot of skeletons in their closet. He's told a story about her great aunt Bedelia, who killed her own father by bashing him over the head with an ashtray. Something interesting about this marble ashtray is that it actually appears in all 5 stories. I'll point them out along the way. We can see in these very overacted flashbacks that he clearly wasn't the most pleasant person in the world.
bunch of dirty vultures just waiting to get your hands on my money.
I love the use of the comic panels during these scenes, the borders going from cake frosting to blood as he gets bashed over the head. And now every Father's Day for the last 7 years, Bedelia returns to his grave to rub it in his face that she got away with it. I really love the performance here. It's such a perfect combo of both good acting and overacting.
Ashtray back in place, chair overturned.
But Bedelia doesn't get to enjoy her drunken rant for too long, as her father breaks through the earth, not seeking revenge. No. He's looking for his cake that he was promised. The makeup on the zombie looks really fantastic and is complemented perfectly by the lighting. The bright red shadows truly capturing the feel of a live-action comic book. Something I find kind of humorous is this guy is crawling out of this hole so slowly. It would have taken nothing for Bedelia to simply, crawl away, get up, run. But, I guess she was so petrified with fear, she didn't really, think of it. But I'm gonna go with anyway. We then get the most terrifying scene in the entire film. I told you. Now, they're all just waiting around for Bedelia, not knowing that she will not be making her presence known this evening. So Hank takes it upon himself and decides to go looking for her. He ends up stumbling upon the open grave, falling into it in the process. Now, I've never really understood this part. Like, what the hell is moving the headstone? Is it Hank moving around in the grave? Or is the zombie moving it with his mind? Regardless, I have the same question I had before. Why doesn't he just stand up? But he doesn't stand up, and the headstone crushes him. Also, this scream right before he gets crushed. Amazing. After the second person goes missing this evening, they come up with the brilliant idea of one of them going to look for them alone. I can't see anything going wrong. Oh, I don't think her neck is supposed to bend that way. We now only have 2 people left standing, Richard and Cass, and they finally decide going and search together, but at this point it's too late because this guy found his cake. This ending is both creepy and hilarious. The decapitated head in a plate is certainly an unpleasant sight. However, the reaction from our survivors is just so hilarious that I can't help but to laugh. I just love it. And that brings an end to our first story. While Father's Day undoubtedly has some humorous moments layered throughout, the horror elements are definitely more prominent. The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, however, takes the opposite approach, feeling more like a comedy with horror and sci-fi elements layered throughout. Starring Stephen King as the title character, and in my opinion gives just a stellar performance. It's interesting seeing this man who's written such terrifying books act like just a complete idiot. Jordy is just working a normal day on his little farm located in an incredibly rural area when a meteor crashes no more than 10 feet ahead of him. He makes the very dumb decision of touching it, burning the shit out of his fingers in the process. But Jordy isn't too concerned with this throbbing hand. No, he's too busy fantasizing about what this meteor could possibly be worth.
I sent less $200.
Not wanting to burn himself again, he decides splashing the meteor with water would be his best course of action. Unfortunately, this causes the meteor to crack right down the middle, also shattering his dreams of that cool $200 in the process. A strange liquid oozes out, which Jordy refers to as
Meteor ship.
He relaxes for an undisclosed amount of time until realizing that a strange green substance resembling grass has been growing on where his fingers were burned. His fantasy from before turns into a nightmare as he envisions his hand being chopped off. The more that time passes, the more the grass spreads until eventually his property resembles a jungle. More antics ensue until Jordy reaches his boiling point when the substance starts spreading to, well, the worst place possible. He then makes the worst choice he could possibly make and decides to jump into a bath in order to alleviate the pain. And this, of course, causes the infection to rapidly increase. More time passes, and when Jordy finally reveals himself, we can see that the foreign substance has spread all over his body. Not being able to handle the suffering any longer, Jordy grabs a shotgun and ends his own life. A very haunting ending to this one. While this episode begins with a lot of humor, it certainly does not end that way. Jordy was just a simple man who got unlucky and was too stupid to get help before this thing completely took over. Oh, and before we move on, the marble ashtray appears on the desk of the doctor, who's gonna cut off Jordy's hand in his fantasy. Now we get into what I would easily consider the best story of the lot, something to tide you over. We have Richard, played by Leslie Nielsen, and his wife has been cheating on him with a young Ted Danson, and he comes up with a very cruel plan to get back at the two of them. Both actors do a fantastic job here, elevating what could have been a very basic middle story of the film into something truly fantastic. Richard plays an audio recording of Becky, his wife, clearly in distress, calling out for help from Harry.
Please, Harry, please come.
Now he's absolutely terrified about what could be going on with her, so he has no choice but to play along with Richard's sick game. Harry goes with Richard to a very secluded beach in hopes of finding Becky, but instead finds a hole deep enough to hide a body. Richard pulls out a gun, threatening to shoot Harry if he doesn't get into the hole and bury himself up to his neck.
Jump into that hole.
But if he listens, he will allow him to see Becky again. He does keep his promise, allowing Harry to see her, but through a TV screen, and unfortunately, she is in the same position as him. This is all very disturbing and sad. Both of them are left for dead with no possibility of help, and even worse for Harry, he's forced to watch the woman he loves slowly drown. All while Leslie Nielsen maniacally laughs and watches for his own amusement. I would say this is the darkest segment of the movie, hands down. Before Harry comes to his untimely demise, he stares straight into the camera and gives Richard a very eerie warning.
I'm gonna get you. You hear me, Richard? You hear me, Richard? I'm gonna get you!
However, he doesn't seem fazed.
Hold your breath there, Harry.
For now, anyway. I also find this shot of his head underwater is just fucking hilarious. The next night, Richard tries to relax with one of his home movies, but he doesn't get to relax for too long, as he starts to get the feeling that someone or something is watching him. But he shakes the feeling off and goes to take a shower. The tension in this scene is incredible. We just get glimpses of the two intruders walking through the home as they slowly make their way to the bathroom that Richard resides in. The thick fog following the two of them all the way through the home is also a really nice touch. Richard, now feeling frightened, runs to his side table to grab a gun, and on that side table lies the marble ashtray. Richard warns if they continue, he will not hesitate to shoot, but this does not seem to deter the intruders in the slightest.
I remind you, dear boy, I have the gun.
We finally get the reveal, and it's amazing. Harry and Becky have turned into these zombie-like creatures. The makeup is just perfection in my opinion. And Leslie Nielsen just sells it so good. He tries shooting them, but unfortunately for him, they have absolutely no effect. This is also pretty hilarious. Richard runs away, locking himself inside of the bathroom, but of course, when he turns around, they're right behind him. So not only are they undead, but they also unlock the ability of teleportation. Kind of makes you ask the question of why they didn't just teleport behind him right at the start, but I guess they wanted to spook him a little bit first. And if you don't laugh at this scream cry done by Leslie Nielsen, I don't know what to tell you. We then got to Richard on the beach getting what he deserves, and even in the situation he finds himself in, he's still being a cocky prick.
I can hold my breath for a long time!
We then get this Three Stooges sounding music. And that brings an end to story 3. I would say story number 4, The Crate, would be the segment the creators put the most effort into. For one thing, it's the longest story of the bunch, and I think they use that runtime effectively. With all the death scenes and the special effects on the monster itself, I would imagine this had the biggest budget of the 5, and although it takes a bit longer to get going compared to the other stories we've seen thus far, once it does, it's truly exceptional. A janitor working at a university finds an old crate hidden under a staircase. Not knowing what it is, he contacts a professor from the school, and they take it back to his office and crack it open. The janitor, thinking he sees jewels hidden inside the crate, decides to stick his hand in like an idiot, immediately regretting his decision as he's attacked by what's ever been living inside it for the last 100 years. This is all very well done. You don't get a full shot of the monster right away, just seeing its glowing eyes hidden inside of the crate, really adding to the mystery around it, until they ruin it by actually showing the thing. And it resembles some sort of baboon. I think it would have been much more frightening not to see the monster. Sometimes leaving things up to a viewer's imagination is much more terrifying than what you could actually show on screen, and I feel like this is an example of less is more. Some more faculty at the school get murdered, causing Stanley to flee in order to get help from his friend Henry, who's also a professor. This guy just fucking hates his wife and is constantly fantasizing about murdering her throughout this story, so I think you can imagine where this is going. Stanley explains everything to Henry, and he comes up with the idea to spike Stanley's drink in order for him to pass out, allowing him to go and explore the school on his own. Before heading out, he writes a note to his wife, Billy, and if you pay attention, you can see the marble ashtray on his bar in this scene. Upon arriving at the school, he discovers blood littered everywhere. He begins the process of cleaning up this disaster as Billy discovers the note left for her. He lies in the note, telling his wife that Professor Stanley attacked an undergrad student and now he needs her help covering up the evidence.
But as you so often say, what would I do without you?
What indeed, Henry? What indeed?
Billy enters the school as she's greeted by a frantic Henry. He breaks out into laughter, barely able to contain his glee as he leads her towards the crate under the stairs. He then uses force to get her as close as possible, and as the crate breaks open and grabs her, she becomes the final victim. Henry then locks the crate back up and dumps it into the water, and him and Stanley both live happily ever after. And that brings an end to story 4. And this brings us to our final story. They're creeping up on you. I don't have too much to say about this one. It's not really scary or funny. It's just straight up nasty. A positive again is the special effects, as they are through the rest of the film, and you really get to see them on display in the final scene here. We follow the ruthless businessman, Mr. Pratt, who spends a crap load of money making his apartment completely germ-proof as he's a major germaphobe. However, even with all that money spent, it doesn't keep cockroaches out from invading the place.
Once you get a foothold in the building, you never get rid of them.
The rest of the story is basically just him trying to kill the bugs, with none of his attempts working. They just continue to multiply until eventually they eat him alive in one of the most disgusting scenes I've ever seen in any film. The marble ashtray can be seen in his bathroom being used as a soap dish. And that brings an end to story 5. We get one final segment, coming back to the father and son from the opening of the film. Tom Savini also makes a cameo here as the garbage man. And Joe King gets his revenge on his abusive father by using a voodoo doll to repeatedly stab him in the throat. We can assume this kills him. A very haunting end to the movie. I absolutely love this movie. Yes, at certain points it can be cheesy and is filled with an abundance of overacting, but to me that just adds to the movie's charm and atmosphere. The only thing I can really compare it to is Tales from the Crypt, which captured a similar vibe. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you watched till the end, you're awesome. If you could hit the video with a like and subscribe, it would be much appreciated. The next time you see me, we'll be watching Creepshow Part 2. I hope to see you there.